Breaking news, Raider Nation. Owner Mark Davis is speaking out about the status of his head coach, who's been a complete failure so far this year, and saying that Josh McDaniels is our head coach and will be for years to come. This comes after he had another private meeting with Josh McDaniels after the embarrassing loss to the New Orleans Saints, a lengthy meeting right after the game, and this is the second time this has happened this year. We are barely in week 8, and he's already had to have private meetings with the head coach after games because they've had such embarrassing losses so far. We're going to unpack what this statement means, and we're going to lay out some scenarios of what could possibly be happening this year and what was really the plan for the Raiders all along. Have they tricked the fans? Have they bamboozled the fans into having a false sense of hope for the 2022 season? We're going to lay all this out because there's some things that I've been thinking personally that I haven't said publicly, and I think now with this information, it might actually be true. And so we'll find out more about that. So, like I said, the backdrop of this statement by Mark Davis to Vincent Bosnior is basically responding to the chatter after he had a private meeting with Josh McDaniels, which is on one level, what do you expect us to think, Mark, when you're meeting privately with this coach for the second time this season after an embarrassing loss in which you could not even get past the 50-yard line with all of your starters in the game? What are we supposed to think? They're just talking about haircuts, or they're just talking about, I don't know, the weather? Of course they're talking about the team, how it's been a disaster, and how he needs to fix the team. But because Mark Davis is coming out here and saying he's going to be our coach for years to come, what does this really mean? What does this really mean, right? And it could only mean 1, 2, maybe 3 things, which is 1, he never intended for the Raiders to do well this year. And when Mark Davis said at the beginning of the year that this is not a rebuild and that the Super Bowl is still in sight, he was full of shit and probably trying to sell some season tickets. That could be one thing. Or 2, he's already given Josh McDaniels and Mr. Dave Ziegler the bag. And so maybe he can't let Josh McDaniels go, even if he is a complete disaster, having one of the worst records in the NFL with one of the best rosters in the NFL at the same time. Or this third option, which I'm going to get into in a little bit, that has a lot to do with starting quarterback Derek Carr, who led this team to the playoffs last year with a worse roster, by the way. Just letting you know that real quick. So any head coach, if they perform this poorly, you would think that they are on the hot seat for sure. I mean, this guy, Josh McDaniels, and making Nathaniel Hackett look like Andy Reid right now in this division. So Mark Davis must have given him and Ziegler the bag. If he's going to be the coach for years to come, keep in mind, these coaching deals, these head coach deals are fully guaranteed. It's not like the same roster contract. So Mark Davis can't afford a new coach while still paying off the tab of Josh McDaniels if he ever got rid of him. So Mark Davis probably made this mistake where he gave this guy the bag too early without knowing too much of the situation. You want to give this guy the crown, give this guy the money because he's been Brady and Belichick's little boy on the sideline with a clipboard for many years. Maybe that was all Belichick and Brady and not too much Josh McDaniels. And the thing is, we don't know Josh McDaniels' contract. We don't know Dave Ziegler's contract. When John Gruden was hired, we knew it was the 10-year, $100 million deal, but this contract has not become public. And I think Raiders fans, especially the ones who put their hard-earned dollar to buy season tickets, expensive as hell, Las Vegas tickets, I think they deserve to know how much this guy is getting paid to completely shit the bed week after week. And keep in mind, Dave Ziegler and McDaniels are kind of a package deal. So it seems like if you get rid of one of them, you're kind of getting rid of both. So Mark Davis is screwed in both directions here. But who knows? It's a new system. It's a new scheme. You know, you can't expect us to just be lighting up the scoreboard because it's the first year. You know, it's this new head coach with this new roster. You got to get things going, right? There's no way you can have high expectations because you got to learn this new intricate scheme. That's the BS excuse that we're fed every single week. But our guy, Josh Dubois, who's no longer covering the Raiders, is pointing out something a little interesting. And I usually disagree with this guy, but Brian Daboll, head coach of the New York Giants, 6-2 in his first year. Mike McDaniel, head coach of the Miami Dolphins, without his starting quarterback Tua most of the time, is 5-3. And then you got Kevin O'Connell with the Minnesota Vikings and Kirk Cousins having a 6-1 record, and that's in the same division as the Green Bay Packers, by the way. So I don't really know how far this excuse goes of, oh, we need more time, first-year head coaches, there's no way we could have gotten it done. But hey, maybe the expectations are low inside the building and they really weren't expecting much this year. But congrats to the Giants and the Dolphins and the Vikings because they're able to figure it out in their first year. With much weaker rosters, by the way, with much weaker QBs, by the way, Daniel Jones, Tua Tagovailoa, and also Kirk freaking Cousins. But it is quite odd the arrogance that Josh McDaniels walks around with, the nerve that he has to make certain statements after embarrassing losses. Yes, he said, blame it all on me, blame it all on me. But today, he's just started making so many BS statements saying, oh, we're not the only team that loses games. Oh, yeah, we know that, Josh. You're not the only team that loses games, but you're one of 3 teams in the NFL this year who who got completely shut out and scored no points when you're supposed to be an offensive genius. That don't look too smart to me, buddy. And don't even get me started on this defensive coordinator Patrick Graham guy. Oh, he went to Yale. He's so smart. He went to Yale. He has a good scheme. Yo, at this point, you look like you went to continuation school, bro. But Vinny B, Vincent Bonsignore, yes, he has access to the team. He has access to Mark Davis. And so he's going to be sort of a mouthpiece for the team. And he's not going to ask any tough questions because he's got to make his money. He's got to keep his access, and no disrespect to that. He's got to do his job. But he really is polishing turds here, man. Not only is he talking about Josh McDaniels, yes, he's our head coach for years to come, but he's also criticizing us who are upset about Josh McDaniels' tenure so far, saying anyone who actually thought the Raiders would even think of pulling a plug this early on a new coach, let alone do it, doesn't understand the big picture going on here. The big picture. Oh, man. Oh, I want to see this picture because how this picture looks so far, it looks like it has a cracked frame. This picture looks freaking pixelated to me. I don't know what this picture is because this big picture you have really doesn't make much sense. You go out here, you trade your first and second round pick for a wide receiver in Davante Adams, and at the time, give him the fattest contract for a wide receiver in history, and then you go and get Chandler Jones, who we haven't seen so far this year at all make any plays. You go give your old bro the bag, who you're friends with in New England. You extend Max Crosby, good deal. Extend Carr, Renfro, and what do we have? We have 5 losses on the season. We have a season that looks completely shut now. We have a season in which there is actually no hope, but towards next year, we're already looking towards next year. You're saying the big picture as if this is a rebuild. You don't go and pay for the most expensive wide receiver in history at the time and extend several players and have your franchise QB extended for next year, for the big picture. The big picture needs to be what's in front of you right now. We need to be focusing on the photo that's developing right now, not some picture long into the future. And it really is more arrogance of Josh McDaniels not adapting to the Raiders, a Raiders team that went to the playoffs last year that had developed so finely under Mike Mayock and John Gruden. Rich Bisaccia was able to coast that wave and have them lead themselves to the playoffs last year. And you have this reporter here pointing out the differences between the Eagles and the Raiders and what he is able to notice in terms of the offense. Josh McDaniels is trying to make players fit his offense rather than doing what Nick Sirianni is doing with Philadelphia, building an offense around his players. And I've always just scratched my head thinking this, why is Josh McDaniels not adapted to what Derek Carr and the Raiders are already doing on the offensive side of the ball last year? We look better with Zay Jones last year than we do this year with Davante Adams. It makes absolutely no sense unless this head coach is just being stubborn and doesn't want to adjust to what we already have. And so when you force people to fit your scheme, you're saying, hey, we got to do it my way or the highway. Well, what do you get? You get a situation where you don't even score points on a Saints defense that, we start talking about how they're dope. Oh, Cam Jordan, all this stuff. Oh, they're dope. They didn't have Marshawn Lattimore, their best defensive back in this game. And going into this game, they had given up the second most points in the NFL. And that is in the NFC South, a division that, let's just be honest, is not good this year, So you got no excuses from me, buddy. And even Ryan Clark, this guy's on television. This guy wants to have media access too. He doesn't want to burn any bridges. This guy is even willing to say publicly that maybe Josh McDaniels is not a great head coach. And let's just talk about it. And this is the third scenario. We talked about the 2 scenarios. Maybe the Raiders didn't have high expectations this year because it's the first year in the scheme. So we got to wait for Derek and McDaniel to get it together with Davante next year, not this year because it's a new scheme, even though we have several other head coaches pointing that, hey, it doesn't take 2 years to win more than 2 games. It doesn't. So there's either that or, hey, maybe Mark Davis does want to fire Josh McDaniels, but he's already given these guys the bag and they just rob the Raiders right now and there's nothing he can do. And that kind of makes sense. No contract details are released. He's saying he's our coach for years to come. These are fully guaranteed contracts. We know Mark Davis doesn't have too much cash compared to some of these other billionaire owners out there. So maybe we're stuck. Maybe we're freaking stuck with Josh McDaniels. Or there is this third scenario that I've thought about for a long time and it has a lot to do with Derek Carr. Now, I have seen Derek Carr as a starting QB take his team to the playoffs, and these are teams that are not that talented twice in his career. Josh McDaniels as a head coach, I haven't seen him do jack shit in his career as a head coach, only as an offensive coordinator, being Belichick's right-hand boy, right? That's all I've seen so far. But maybe there is this plan all along that I've thought about. You know, the extension to Derek Carr when Josh McDaniels became the head coach, to me, it took some time. And it happened over a slow period. It actually happened after the Davante Adams trade, which I always thought was so interesting. And here's what I think happened, guys. There is no way Josh McDaniels, who, by the way, thinks he's a QB guru. We know when he was in Denver, he said he could make a high school QB into a pro. He literally said that after they traded away Jay Cutler. So here's the thing. Mark Davis says Josh McDaniels is the coach for years to come. That means he's got a long-term plan. That means this is a rebuild, even though they traded for Davante Adams. Now, why would you trade for Davante Adams if you're planning on rebuilding, if you're planning on maybe eventually getting your own quarterback and getting all your own guys? Well, there was no way, in my opinion, and this is my opinion. I'm sorry, Vinny B, Las Vegas Review Journal. Yeah, this is my opinion. It's not a report, my bad. But in my opinion, there was no way you could move on from Derek Carr after that amazing season last year in 2021. This guy helped will the team to the playoffs with other leaders on the team like Josh Jacobs and other leaders on the team who Josh McDaniels has shipped away, like Alec Ingold and Unique Ngakoue. By the way, Unique Ngakoue, I think it looks a little better than Chandler Jones so far, right? I mean, I think so. So there was no way he can move on from this guy. The fan base was behind him, but you could move through this guy if you have a lot of leeway and a long-term plan. And the fact that the Derek Carr extension did not happen until Davante Adams was traded really means a lot. Derek Carr could have gotten way more money guaranteed, and we were absolutely baffled when we found out that there was a 1 year out in his contract. Now, people often say Derek Carr took a team-friendly deal, but when you look at the annual cap amount, it really isn't that team-friendly. The only team-friendly thing about his deal is that McDaniels and Ziegler can get out of it after this year if they want to. And so how did they push him to take this shitty deal? How did they push Derek Carr, a guy who could play for several other teams, a guy who a lot of teams wanted this past offseason, a guy who a lot of teams are picking up the phone saying, oh, what's up with Derek Carr? How did they get him to take this deal? The way you do it is you go and you trade for his best friend, Davante Adams. You give him the bag and say, hey, are you really going to turn down this $25 million contract this year with a 1 year out to not play with Davante Adams? Are you really going to hold out and not play with Davante Adams this year? And in my opinion, I think they pushed Carr in a corner where he had to take this deal. And perhaps Josh McDaniels and Mark Davis were never planning on doing anything great this year with Derek Carr and Davante Adams. Because when you look at the game plan and you look at the plays that McDaniels calls sometimes, it makes you think, are we trying to lose? Are we trying to lose? Well, Willie, no coach would ever try to lose. No coach would ever try to lose. Well, we better hope he's trying to lose, because if he's trying his best, then we're really fucked. And so, like I'm saying, this is my opinion, but I'm actually trying to give Mark Davis and Josh McDaniels the benefit of the doubt. I'm actually holding out hope that there's some long-term, really high-level plan that we don't know is happening right now, which I am thinking is to move on from Derek Carr by moving through Derek Carr, sabotaging the season, calling some BS plays even with Davante Adams, so the whole entire fan base could say, oh, well, he can't get it done with Davante. I guess that's on him. Let's ship him away and get our own QB. And if this isn't the plan, like I said earlier, we are in a shitload of trouble. We are in a crap load of trouble, because if Josh McDaniels is trying his best right now and he cannot score any points or even cross the midfield with Derek Carr. And by the way, I know Derek Carr had a shitty game too. He had a shitty as hell game. But if you can't, as a head coach, have Derek Carr cross the middle of the field against the New Orleans Saints, that's on you, because there's been plenty of other coaches who've got it done with Derek Carr. But maybe they were actually trying to win games. And the Raiders do have a first-round draft pick this upcoming season. They have a second-round draft pick. Waller is still going to be on the team. He's going to be guaranteed next year. So is Renfro. So is Chandler Jones. So is Max Crosby. So is Davante Adams. So is Nate Hobbs. So is Trayvon Merrick. The only person who we don't know is fully guaranteed next year is Derek Carr. And maybe that was the plan all along for Josh McDaniels to get his guy. Like Josh McDaniels said when he was the coach in Denver, he could take in high school QB and make him look like an all-pro. But now he's taking an all-pro QB and making him look like a high schooler. Over 60% of my viewers are not subscribed. Make sure you subscribe to this channel for more NFL content. My name is WiFiWillie. Peace out, and I hope you have a good one.